I've had an email from Andy up in Scotland who's going to be going to university, and he wonders whether he should take the student loan, which apparently he doesn't need for his studies, and invest it instead. What would you do? Hi folks, and welcome to another 5 Minute Friday. Great to have you with me once again. I've had a couple of weeks off. I've been on holiday and I'm feeling much better for it, although a little bit fatter. Hopefully you'll see a difference though soon, because I'm back to Slimming World, and maybe over the next few weeks you'll see me get a little bit more svelte each week. It was a little bit camp, wasn't it? I do have a little bit of a camp side. So Andy is in Scotland and he wonders about taking the maintenance student loan, which is £6,750, which he tells me he can borrow at an interest rate of 1.5%. Should he take that money and invest it? Because let's face it, 1.5% is a pretty cheap interest rate to borrow money on. He assures me in his email that he doesn't need the money for his studies, which suggests that maybe he's a mature student and he's got some money behind him to help him through his studies, or maybe his family are in a position to support him. Important phrase in his question on the email though was, is this a wise move? Is it a wise move to borrow this money and invest it? So I want to answer that very quickly. First thing to say is that the student loan system is very different in Scotland to the one in England and Wales, and being an England-based advisor, I understand the student finance system here more than I do the one in Scotland. I'll put a link below to a brilliant article on Money Saving Expert about how the England and Wales system works. I nearly said UK then. And I'll find a similar article on the Scottish system, so you can click through and find out a bit more about the respective systems. Just realised that I haven't put 5 minutes on the clock, so we better make this 4 minutes on the clock, and we'll do that right now, and we'll crack on. So the first thing to say is that borrowing money to invest is a sort of time-honoured tradition. It's been happening since the year dot, really, and we in the industry call that leverage. So you take other people's money and you invest it. Yes, you have to pay them interest and you have to pay them back at some point, but while you have their money, you can put it to work by investing it. There's nothing wrong with that in principle at all. Like I say, it's been done forever. I think you need to take note of your own feelings about risk and about debt, particularly though. Debt is a weight around your neck. It's a nagging feeling that you owe other people money, and it's much better to not have any debt. Of course, most of us carry some debt at some point in our lives, not least a mortgage if we're buying a house. And debt is okay as long as you can manage it and you understand its implications. I talk a lot on the podcast about good debt versus bad debt. Generally, good debt is low interest and used to buy stuff which goes up in value, and bad debt is high interest loans which are used to buy stuff that goes down in value, like cars and computers and food. The steak that I'm going to enjoy for my tea tonight isn't going to be worth so much once it's been through my system. What a lovely image. And by the way, I'm not borrowing money to buy steak. Anyway, getting a little bit distracted, but good debt and bad debt, and according to those criteria, this would be a good debt. I actually think student loans are a good debt. They're generally used to buy something which increases in value, which is your earnings power by having the qualifications and the life experience that comes with being a student. But this is more a maths question, really. So Andy can borrow this money at, he says, 1.5% a year interest. He only has to start paying it back when he earns, I think, 18.5 grand a year, something like that. And so it's cheap money and it's accessible to him. So on the strength of that, that's not a bad idea. Really important though, leverage, borrowing, always increases the risk of any investment you make. Why? Because you could potentially lose more by leveraging than you could if you were investing your own money. Simple maths, if you have £10,000, invest it and lose it all, you've lost £10,000. If you borrow £10,000, invest it and lose it all, you've lost the 10 grand plus the interest that you've had to pay while you have had the money. And of course, the person wants their 10 grand back. So leverage increases the risk, and you just need to be careful about how you feel about borrowing to invest. It's a kind of a personal thing, unique to everybody. Andy specifically asks, is this a wise move? Does it make sense? Is it wise for him to do this? I think that's the wrong question, or at least it's an incomplete question. The question should be, is this a wise move for me? I don't know you, Andy, so you need to answer that for yourself. Like I say, people's responses and feelings about debt are different, so you need to understand your own mind on that score and make sure you're happy with the implications and the principles of getting into debt. One thing you absolutely must do is be careful with the investment. In the email, Andy talks about property. Should he borrow the loan over 2-3 years, invest it in a buy-to-let property? Obviously, that will begin producing rent. Well, why not? You could do, but you must understand the implications of the investment then. It becomes less about the interest on the loan and more about the fundamentals of the investment. Property is illiquid. It's hard to sell a property sometimes if you really need to. And so you need to be careful of that and aware of it, but property is generally a great investment over time. So think about your time scale again. Are you going to hold this investment for a very long time and pay interest in the meantime? Or are you thinking, I'm going to put this student loan money to work for 2 or 3 or 5 years and then pay it back? In which case, property might not be a great idea because that's usually best held for the longer term. Of course, you could take the money and invest it in ISA and into investments like equities and bonds and stuff like that. Much more liquid, generally lower cost, often more tax efficient if you hold that money in an ISA. So I think there are much more benefits in investing in that kind of thing than buying a single brick and mortar property. Yes, you can touch it, it's tangible, but it might be hard to sell. I like quickly movable, fluid, easy to get out of investments. If this is your first foray into investing, don't drink your own Kool-Aid, as the Americans like to say. You may strike it lucky and do very well with your investments, but that will be more luck than judgment. So hold whatever you do very lightly. Be prepared to get out quickly and pay off the debt, and then you're back to square one, but at least you don't owe anybody anything. So, Andy, as far as whether I think it's a good idea or not, I don't have any major issues with it. I think the mathematics stacks up. You will probably make more investments over time than the 1.5% interest you're paying to the loan, but there's risks involved as well. So as long as you understand and take responsibility, then do what you want to do and enjoy the ride. But I hope that helps with some of the thinking process around it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week for another 5 Minute Friday here on Meaningful Money. See you then.